Hello, welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today we're going to be jamming with a green Stompy deck in Spike's Corner. Some people have called it Green Deck Wins, as a parody to the Red Deck Wins. We did a version of it with Dominaria, but not since M19, and there are some new cards that make the deck even more competitive than it was. Let's go out there and throw some big green monsters at some people. Opponent will be on the play. Being on the draw with this deck, we really want to make sure that we have a decent creature that can also block on turn 2. Also, you're always looking for that card, Llanowar Elves. 4 lands is a bit much, but you just can't send these 2 away. In fact, I'd probably keep a 5-lander that had these 2. Oh my goodness, though. Careful what you wish for. Aether Hub, Submerged Boneyard. This reeks of a control deck. And Glint-Sleeve Siphoner is going to lead the way, which draws extra cards. So that is scary. We have to put our opponent under pressure. Fortunately, we have just the critter to do it. We'll see if our opponent has a cast down or some shenanigans like that ready to go. And a big turn here. If the Steel Leaf dies, I'm not sure where this game goes. If it doesn't, well, we're gonna have an interesting time. Black, blue, and green. It's an interesting battle that they have. An interesting tug of war that they play. Let's lead with this impulse, see what we find. I think what I want is the Scrapheap Scrounger. It can be annoying and difficult for a control deck to deal with. Let's move to combat. I think I want all the damage I can get. Therefore, I can save an Adventurous Impulse for next turn. I don't think that will cost me anything. And let's send them. Ta-da. Okay, so we'll play out our Scrapheap Scrounger. If it gets countered, it's very likely to be able to come back in the future. So I'm not going to hold back with it. Obviously, a Syncopate would be sad, but an Essence Scatter, Scrapheap Scrounger is exactly what you want to get Essence Scattered. If something has to get Essence Scattered because the ability to bring it back from the graveyard is like you drew an extra card later. Very concerned that we're in Vraska's Contempt range, but our opponent doesn't play it. Another Steel Leaf Champion's great. Let's get out the Cemetery. And now again, we have to question, do we attack with our Llanowar Elves? There is a possibility if our Steel Leaf is killed in combat that we can get back the Scrounger and play another Steel Leaf. I think for this turn, I'm going to attack first and only with the Steel Leaf and see what happens. Oh my. Alright, now I'm going to go for the other Steel Leaf Champion. If it does get countered, the Scrapheap Scrounger can return to the battlefield. And there is another Essence Scatter. So we can do this at instant speed as long as we make sure our elf doesn't die. And we don't end that phase. No problem. So Glint-Sleeve Siphoner draws an additional card. The opponent loses an additional life. Hopefully we keep the pressure high enough that we can close the game before those cards matter. As our hand is pretty rocky with basically these 2 lands that we don't need anymore, but Adventurous Impulse might dig us up something beautiful. This is definitely where, if you are the opponent, a Vraska's Contempt is what you want, and a Blossoming Defense is what you fear. So Champion of Wits. Draw 2, discard 2. What cards will our opponent find? 2 lands discarded, so I'm certain they have another land. Which leaves 4 who knows what cards. But none of them were Vraska's Contempt, and none of them were cast down before this turn. This is one of those cases where you can't fault an opponent for thinking and using their timer a bit, as the game is very much in the balance, on the line here. So there must be a solution for this champion with. I guess there doesn't have to be. The opponent could go lower, but the attack of the Siphoner is very interesting. All right, bring back Scrounger. Let's get the opponents ready for that. Ooh. Well, if they use a counterspell, here, then they're just in too much trouble on the board. Let's go for it. Hey, Big E Dino. 12/12 trample. Only invested 3 mana there. I'm going to hold on to this Impulse. If we attack with all our creatures and one of them dies, bring back the Scrap Heap might be a lot better. Does look like our opponents found a removal spell for something, although they're going to regret using it at instant speed because of that Ghalta. So yeah, I've definitely learned a lesson playing against Ghalta and with Ghalta that you need to remove things on your turn, or at least during the opponent's upkeep or draw step, so that they don't get a chance to just cast their Ghalta unless you have an answer to it and you want that to happen. The Fatal Push there didn't destroy the Steel Leaf Champion because our opponent at that point did not have Revolt, so Fatal Push just never did what the opponent needed. Let's get into the deck. It's probably... We'll show off some of the new cards here. I'm still running 4 Adventurous Impulse. A lot of lists aren't. I think this is strictly something for the best of 1 scenario. I need my draws to be smoother. Flooding out is terrible, and having the wrong creatures for the wrong matchup is terrible. But this is a card that, while losing you a tiniest bit of tempo, which is very crucial to the deck, it does give you a flexibility, especially for best of 1, that I think is missing. So while I wouldn't run this in best 2 out of 3, I think that playing it in best of 1 is a good decision. I also can't get away from playing 4 Blossoming Defense to defend my creatures. Even in best of 1, I think everybody right now understands the importance of killing other creatures, and Blossoming Defense is the way to handle it. I'm on 2 Greenbelt Rampagers. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're medium. I never want more than 1, so I think 2 is a good number. The Elves, the Scroungers, I think you run all of that. I run 4 Thorn Lieutenant because red is still my nemesis, and I still play against a great deal of it every day. And Thorn Lieutenant is probably the best new card printed against the red deck. If it becomes targeted by an On-Crop Crasher or an Earthshaker Kenra, you get a 1/1 green Elf Warrior token. If it gets Lightning Struck, you still get a 1/1 green Elf Warrior token, and their Bomat Courier can't really attack. The second ability gets used rarely, but can be helpful. A Heart of Kiran, I like using 2. The legendary rule does mean that when you draw 3 or 4 of these and you're behind, it's very hard to use the Heart of Kiran well, so 2 seems right. Same general principle with Rhonas, and we're going to get to the same general principle down here with Ghalta. I like 2, and I think that I have the flexibility to run 2 because of the impulses. I can usually find them in a given game. Also, we've got 4 Steel Leaf Champions. There's no question. This is the strong card of the deck and is exactly what you want to be playing all the time. Backed up by some Thrashing Brontodons, some Vine Mares, which are new in M19, hexproof and can't be blocked by black creatures, give you a way to break through those Scarab God that kind of clutter the board. Remember, anything a Scarab God brings back is a black zombie, in addition to its creature types, which means nothing it brings back can block a Vine Mare. I've got a Nissa Vitaforce and a Vivien Reid. Sometimes Vivien Reid is better when you just need to kill an artifact, enchantment, or a flyer to break through, or you need to grind. And sometimes Nissa is good, an empty board, or like Post to Fairy or something. You slam this, you make a 5/5, you get busy. And we talked about the Ghaltas. In the mana base, 10 Forest, 4 Oasis, 4 Blooming Marsh, 4 Cemetery. 22 lands. I would run 24 if I didn't run the Impulses. But the Impulses can double as lands where you need them, and again, they kind of exist to help us draw the right mix of creatures and spells that isn't always normal in Magic, and therefore you have to hedge in best of 1 for that. All right, let's bring it along. Back into the ladder. I've got a quest by God. I need to cast 9 more creature spells, and I think I've brought the right deck to do it. Let's see who's up next. Wiztard. It's a name. Let's not try to read into it. Also rolling that Ajani. So drawing 2 Hearts of Kiran, especially on the draw, is pretty iffy. We do have a way to crew it. But this is, in a lot of ways, a mulligan to 6. Is kind of a way that you have to think about it. But if this were a 6-card hand, I would keep it, no question. I'm worried about being on the draw with this hand, but I'm willing to give it a try. I would give this definitely like a 5 out of 10. It's right on the edge. I could mulligan it, or I could throw it, or I could play it. Drawing the Scrounger is interesting. It lets us play with Blossoming Defense on Heart of Kiran, and against black, that's very good. Our opponent opens on an Argyl's Bloodfast. We're going to open on a Heart of Kiran, and then the play is, next turn we'll have Scrapheap Scrounger, crew our Heart of Kiran, crash in there with Blossoming Defense open, and a Diregraph Ghoul. So this is zombies plus Bloodfast. Interesting. All right, let's start taking some points off that life total. It will greatly diminish the effectiveness of a Bloodfast. And it looks like our opponent, not with a removal spell at this time. So they're going to be hard-pressed to race us in this game with the Heart of Kiran going and with them using the Bloodfast. And with 2 Blossoming Defense, it's going to be hard to kill our creatures. So it's working out well. We're pretty favored. Our opponent will need some big effects to get back in this. Liliana, Untouched by Death, I don't think will turn out to be the card that does that job.
I will conquer you.
So they do mill away a zombie. We do get drained. The question is, do we go after that Liliana, right? I'm not sure. And our opponent has decided to defend it. We don't have ways to deal with planeswalkers aside from attacking them brutally. We could use a Blossoming Defense to kill it. We could also just ignore it and go right at the opponent and not worry about that life that they gain. A lot of options. Since I have the Blossoming Defense, which can really stop a Liliana minus, I think that I'm just going to push right through the Liliana and try ignoring it. So if Liliana minuses after my opponent casts a few zombies to try to kill something, we can use Blossoming Defense, and then Lily will be very easy to kill. Whereas letting her just basically stop an attack or eat a Blossoming Defense from us and a whole turn of attacking doesn't sound good to me. So we're going to go face. Our opponent has a block here with the Ghoul on the Scrounger if they want it. I would accept that, though. Our Scrounger can come back later. And it keeps our opponent's board presence very low. Graveyard Marshal. I hear flies. Lord of the Accursed. Liliana milling.
They aren't useful to me alive.
Does hit another zombie, so far so good on the RNG. Now we need to draw a creature. And we did, and that is an excellent one. The question here and now is, do we attack with the Brontodon and offer a trade that way? And I think so. It may be time to use these Blossoming Defense as removal. So I'll send you here. And let's see. I don't have to kill the Liliana. Actually, if I trade the Brontodon, I get back a Scrounger, which is completely fine. I don't think our opponent will want to block it all. So do I use the Blossoming Defense here and just kill the Liliana, or do I keep going face? I think face is the place, especially with the Rhonas. All right, our opponent's looking for another trade, and I can either let it die and get back the Scrounger, or I can use the defense here. I like using the defense so I don't have to expose Rhonas, so that's what we'll do. It also makes the opponent think we may not have another, so if they spend their turn going for Vraska's Contempt on the Rhonas, we hit them with that Blossoming Defense. It should be pretty very backbreaking.
Don't get squeamish on me.
Another little drain, another Graveyard Marshal, and another Graveyard Marshal. And another Lord. Alright, ground is getting muggy. If you're not going to block with this Lord, you might want to attack with it, but opponent says no thank you. Oh my. Well... Okay, we can do 7, 8, 9. So we can just do a lot of damage in the air with the Heart of Kiran. The opponent hasn't had the removal yet, and we still have a Blossoming Defense. So as long as I leave a defense up, it seems like a great move. And I guess I need to tap Rhonas to do it. Well, I could also attack with the Rhonas. Yeah, we don't need blockers, right? Because my opponent has to block here. If he doesn't, they die. We also have to consider Argyl's Bloodfast. Hold on. So, Argyl's Bloodfast, we don't want it to flip, because sacrificing a creature to gain life might get our opponent back into this, so we want to get them to 6. So, I could just attack with the heart. Yep, I like that. It also disguises a sneaky block where we can sack Brontodon, kill the Bloodfast, get back Scrounger, and crew the heart, and still have Blossoming Defense open. And then Rhonas can block too. So I'm going to grab you. I'm going to tap you for mana, pump you. Combat, attack. And I guess if the opponent doesn't block the Rhonas, they die. So I will send Rhonas into the fray as well. I won't have the Blossoming Defense open from that line. I miscounted my mana by 1, but I think this is the right play since it eats a creature. Down to 6. Alright, end the turn. Gotta watch out for those Bloodfasts. You do not want those things flipping when you're in a race. Giving the opponent that much life gain can be a catastrophe. So our opponent may minus Liliana and cast all these zombies from the graveyard, but that doesn't do much. It doesn't stop the heart, and as long as we have a Blossoming Defense, the heart's going to go the distance. So our opponent's going to go for it. They have a lot of mana because of the Cabal Stronghold, which is pretty cool. They can pump up their guys, but in the end, if you can't stop the Heart of Kiran, you will die. And that is the scoop. Probably not a good look for Liliana that we ignored her almost the entire game and still came out on top. Alright, let's try to jam one more out. I still run all the Fatal Pushes in my zombie deck, and I'm not saying my opponent didn't, but when I looked in their graveyard, they had like Walk the Plank, and I didn't see much removal. I still think it's very, very important to play Fatal Push in your zombie deck. It's a great tempo card, and Heart of Kiran is such a pain. Anyway, this hand, this is another hand that I would call a 5, but a 6 because of Llanowar Elf. But we're gonna need to draw decent stuff, or it's not gonna go well for us. The top of our deck needs to be kind. Irrigated farmland, looking blue-whitey. Oh yeah, too many lands. I can tell you right now, way too many lands. So whether or not to play around a seal away, heck no. Damage for life. This might get countered, but hopefully it's a syncopate, and that tells me it's probably a syncopate. The fact that we were able to just run it out there. And our opponent didn't have an answer for the group last turn, so I think I just want to pop an Oasis here, which is kind of wild, but I think it's the right play. Because I think my opponent's hand is removal, or not removal, counter spells. They might disallow this trigger, but that is... I would love to trade one of my lands for a disallow. Okay. Interesting. That would give me access to a Blossoming Defense if I had one in my hand, so that's an odd play to make, but it tells me the opponent just doesn't have much else to do. Oh, they have Fatal Push? Okay. They were Hidden Esper. Secret Ninja Esper. Gotcha. Well, that does take down the chances of a Settle the Wreckage quite a bit. So I don't think I'll bother playing around that. Most of the Esper decks forgo Fumigates and Settles, or at least not in the same high numbers as other decks. Let's launch this first, since we may need the mana to pay for a Syncopate, so we want our Llanowar Elf untapped. And you see how the Scrapheap Scroungers made the cut. They're very good anti-control creatures. Vraska's Contempt on the Scrounger, potentially. Not fun, but the way it goes. It is what we sign up for. A Blossoming Defense would have been such an epic play there. Oh well. Tap land means not a Teferi. Again, I'm tempted to deploy this first. But that doesn't play around Syncopate. I still have mana up to play around Syncopate. So, yeah, we can attack first. Let's make our opponent make the decision before they know what else we might play. So close, but so far, this Ghalta. Fatal Push. Okay. Thorn Lieutenant. See if you have the Essence Scatter, a Disallow. Yep. Okay. I think I'll just bring this back now to dodge another Disallow. Don't think my opponent's going to play like a sweeper, but we'll find out. If they did, I don't think we'd see that Fatal Push or that Disallow. Both of those tell me that they do not have a Fumigate. Oh yes, of course.
Hurry!
Of course it's Teferi. So I think we just try to get that Teferi off the board. Don't think there's really another choice. Going face is interesting, but it doesn't seem right. And I think the odds of getting there are pretty good. It did feel like kind of a desperate Teferi, but it's a fog. And there you go. Our opponent does get another card in their hand. But it does mean they didn't or don't have a Gear Hulk going into this. And that's a very scary card. As Gear Hulk for Vraska's Contempt is a way back in the game for our opponent. Here is the Greenbelt. Oh god, does this smell like it? So, let's see. Our opponent could play Gear Hulk counter, and then we don't get the Ghalta, but it might do that anyway. And I guess the Rhonas is potentially better, but we can't play both unless we go for the Rhonas first. Opponent's at 9. Either one is a potential game winner, so we have some big hits. The thing is, if we attacked first, our opponent has a Gear Hulk. They can play it, shoot down, like the Scrapheap Scrounger, and then what happens to our Ghalta? If they take out like a 3 and we replace it with a 5, then I don't think we can play it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Let's say this dies and this dies. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Still, I think I'd rather one of these got disallowed than have a Vraska's Contempt hit something on the board and have something get blocked. So I'm gonna go, well, that's not true at all. Let's save them until post-combat. I think I've thought this through enough, and I think what I want is one of these on the board more than any of these other cards. Glimmer of Genius. Okay, that's not a Gear Hulk. That is not a Gear Hulk. Sometimes they don't have it, my friends. And the 2 to the bottom. Rhonas. Alright. Could have just done nothing that turn, and maybe that would have been a smart call, considering the situation and what was on the board. Let's go for Ghalta. Still don't believe in Settle the Wreckage. Let's do this. They didn't do that in response to the Ghalta. Interesting. There is a Fatal Push. But green gets there, and without the help of Blossoming Defense, which, you know, Blossoming Defense and Heart of Kiran are the cards that really give the control decks fits, and without either of those, we were able to persevere. So, hallelujah. All hail the green Stompy list. I hope you've enjoyed this video, this little trip to Spike's Corner, and to check out the other aggro deck of the format, Mono Green. Thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you're into what I do, and continue to come back to the page. And we're up to, wow, the subscribers have been amazing lately. We're closing in on that 3,000 subscribers. So if you dig it, leave me a comment, hit the like button, and you know, hit that subscribe button if you want more and more and more Magic Arena content. And that's it for me today. That's it for CGB, and I will see you later.